In my family, love came with conditions, and I never met them. I'm Kennedy. I'm 36 now, but the truth of my story begins in the quiet gray corners of my childhood, back in a small, forgettable suburb of Oregon. The kind of town where winters dragged endlessly and summers felt like a countdown to disappointment. Growing up, there wasn't painful in the obvious way. No shouting, no slammed doors, just silence. Cold glances. Moments where I learned to disappear so they wouldn't remind me how invisible I already was. From as early as I can remember, love in our home wasn't something you earned by being kind or consistent. It was something granted to those who knew how to command attention, and my sister, Savannah. She was born for it. 3 years older, 3 times louder, and infinitely more adored. The moment she entered a room, all the air shifted toward her like wind to a flame. Every event, every family photo, every decision in our house rotated around her orbit. Savannah's first birthday catered. Mine sheet cake and paper plates. Her science fair projects were team efforts, my dad wiring miniature lights and mom hand-labeling poster boards. Mine scribbled in pencil and taped to cardboard I found in the garage. By age 8, Savannah was already the star of the school's talent show. I still remember her stepping onto that elementary stage in a glittery red dress, holding a microphone with the confidence of someone who had never been told no. The auditorium echoed with applause. My parents sat front row clapping so hard my dad's wedding band slipped off. Meanwhile, I was behind the curtain literally because I was in charge of operating the spotlight. No name announced. No one even knew I was there. And somehow, I was already learning silence meant safety. Applause was for someone else. I remember this one moment in 4th grade. I had poured my entire heart into a watercolor painting. A landscape, soft blue hills with golden fields. I skipped cartoons for 2 weeks just to get it right for the school's art competition. The night before submission, Savannah strolled into my room. She was in 7th grade then with a new group of friends who thought everything was either lame or iconic. She picked up my painting and said, "This is actually kind of cool. Mind if I show it to them?" I didn't even get the chance to answer before she was halfway out the door. The next day, the painting was gone. Submitted under her name. Her friends raved. My mom just laughed when I confronted her. "She's only trying to help get your work noticed," she said. Help, that's what they called it. I was too young to fight back, but old enough to understand what it meant my efforts were hers to use. My voice didn't matter, and it didn't end there. High school made it worse. Savannah coasted through with praise and padded grades tutors my parents paid for private prep courses, even answers accidentally left out during practice tests. And me, I taught myself. Burned through flashcards under dim lamps while the dishwasher rattled in the background. I once got a B+ in chemistry and nearly cried, not because I wanted better, but because it was mine. I told my mom once that I wanted to apply to a college in Portland. She blinked, frowned slightly, then said, "Why don't you stay home and help your sister with the bakery? She's under a lot of pressure right now." The bakery. That place was supposed to be a family project. But Savannah. She barely showed up. She was always networking or recovering from stress. I, on the other hand, scrubbed grease off the industrial oven, handled the register during December chaos-managed inventory, while my friends went to homecoming. Nobody ever asked if I was tired. Nobody ever asked what I wanted. When I was 16, I finally snapped. Savannah had taken something that wasn't hers again, my personal essay about Grandma Eileen, the only person in the family who ever looked at me like I mattered. I'd written about her stories, her garden, her quiet strength. It was deeply personal, and Savannah submitted it without asking to a state writing competition. She won, first place, ribbon, $500 prize. I stood in the hallway shaking, holding the printout with my name erased. When I showed it to my mom, her response was almost mechanical. "She just borrowed your idea. Don't be so selfish, Kennedy." Selfish. That word echoed in my chest like a sentence passed down. I wasn't the child who needed love. I was the one who made things difficult by asking for fairness. After that day, I stopped expecting justice. I stopped explaining when I was hurt or asking for space. I didn't rebel, I didn't shout, I just went quiet. That kind of silence isn't weakness, it's a strategy. I buried every hurt, every slight, every stolen credit under layers of nods and fake smiles. I became dependable, low maintenance, the one who didn't rock the boat. But what they didn't know, what Savannah never saw, was that even shadows learn to move. Even shadows can plan. And sometimes they don't stay in the background forever. Because one day Savannah said something at a family party, something no one expected. And that same day I held something in my hand that made it clear the shadow she thought she could erase had stepped into the light. She didn't just take the spotlight, she wore my name like it was hers. Leaving home at 18 wasn't a rebellion, it was a quiet survival. No farewell dinner, no hugs or hand-me-down advice. Just a duffel bag, $320 I'd saved from dishwashing at the local diner, and a crumpled acceptance letter to a community college business program in Salem. My parents didn't protest. They didn't ask where I'd go. I think deep down they assumed I'd be back in 6 months. But I didn't come back. I rented a tiny upstairs room in a crooked old house with paper-thin walls and a heater that wheezed more than it worked. That first Oregon winter, I slept in my coat sometimes with a towel around my neck to keep the cold air out. I worked 2 jobs, coffee shop at Dawn convenience store at night. My classmates bought new phones. I typed assignments on a secondhand laptop with a flickering screen. No one clapped for me. No one posted proud family photos. But I had something no one in that house ever gave me peace. And then one night, while mopping the floor at the store, I heard a podcast playing from a Bluetooth speaker someone forgot to turn off. The host was talking about sustainability in household goods, the toxins in laundry products, and how transparency was the next frontier in business. That night, I didn't sleep. I opened my laptop and fell into a rabbit hole: eco-friendly packaging, bamboo textiles, compostable cleaners. I was hooked. 3 months later, I launched Willow and Pine, an online store built with no money, no connections, and no blueprint, just grit. I wrote every product description, packed every order, and used my phone propped up on textbooks to film product demos. My first ad budget, $25 on Facebook. 6 orders came in. That was everything. The business grew little by little. I wasn't a brand yet, but I was becoming one. And that's when Savannah noticed. She never messaged to say congratulations, never asked how I built it. But slowly she began to incorporate it. At family dinners, she'd chirp things like, "My little sister is doing this adorable eco thing online. It's kind of cute." When Better Homes and Gardens mentioned Willow and Pine, she posted a DIY soap recipe with the caption, "Creativity runs in the family." Then I signed a retail deal with a Colorado chain. A big moment for me. I didn't even tell my parents yet, but Savannah. She got there first with a carefully filtered Instagram post showing her kitchen sink captioned, "Inspired by someone close." Big things are coming, I wanted to scream. But I didn't, because I was too tired. Not of the work, but of being erased. Again. Savannah hadn't held a job longer than 6 months in years. She bounced from MLMs to yoga teacher training to interior design consulting, always posting about her next big thing. She borrowed designer bags, rented luxury cars, and smiled with the kind of confidence only someone constantly starting over could carry. But the tipping point, it came on an ordinary Sunday. Family barbecue, kids running through sprinklers, paper plates stacked with potato salad. And then without warning, Savannah turned to a cluster of cousins and said loud enough for the entire table to hear, "Pretty sure Kennedy's having a tough time right now, but she always tries her best." That moment sliced through the air like broken glass. Pitying looks followed. Someone offered me job leads in passing. Another asked, "Are you okay financially?" I sat there in silence, gripping my glass. Savannah smiled sweetly like she'd just rescued a puppy. What she didn't know, what no one at that table knew, was that 3 days earlier, I had wired a full cash deposit for the very lakefront house she bragged about buying someday. No mortgage, no bank loan, just clean-earned money. I let her run with the sympathy narrative because I was done playing defense. Let her perform. The most dangerous woman in any room, the one who smiles while you miscalculate her. She didn't just expose me, she staged my downfall like it was her encore. It all fell apart on a Wednesday morning. Oregon skies were their usual moody gray, but that wasn't what chilled me. It was the subject line in my inbox: partnership paused, vendor ceases operations. Just like that, my biggest supplier, responsible for 70% of Willow and Pine's eco-friendly products, was gone. No notice, no courtesy call, just an email explaining they'd lost investor backing and were shutting down. Effective immediately. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Every campaign I'd planned for spring, every product line we'd prepped, every customer pre-order, it all evaporated. Nearly $40,000 sunk into logistics, packaging, and marketing, now hanging by a thread. By noon, negative comments started popping up online. What's going on with this brand? Why is no one replying to emails? I felt the ground shift beneath me. My home office became a war room. Lawyer, accountant, backup supplier calls ran into the night. One advisor suggested preparing for a worst-case scenario, just in case, he said, sliding a gray folder across the table labeled Confidential Chapter 11 Prep. I didn't want to look at it, but I had to. I wasn't failing, I was protecting my work. I locked the folder away in my home office drawer. What I didn't realize, what I'd forgotten entirely, was that 3 years earlier, Savannah had house sat for me after my wrist injury from a car accident. I'd given her a spare key back then. I never got it back, and she never forgot. 1 week later, I was in Portland negotiating with a potential new supplier when I got a text from Savannah. "Hey, saw some file on your desk. Thought it was PR material, opened it by mistake. Hope that's okay." My stomach dropped. Nobody accidentally opens a file labeled Confidential Legal Counsel Only and reads 5 pages of bankruptcy planning unless they're looking for something. I texted back, "Don't touch my things again." She never replied, and for a moment I naively believed that was the end of it. I was wrong. 3 weeks later, we were all gathered for my father's 60th birthday. Cozy Italian restaurant in downtown Eugene, wine glasses, clinking Sinatra humming low through the speakers. I arrived on time. Savannah, of course, came late, clicking into the room in her white blazer and red heels, hair bouncing like she had a fan following her. But something felt off. The stares from extended family weren't warm, they were pitying. My cousin Delia leaned in and whispered, "Heard something happened with Willow and Pine. Are you okay?" I forced a smile. Every business has ups and downs. We're adjusting. That should have been the end of it. But Savannah wasn't done. As the waiter brought out the birthday cake, she stood, lifted her glass, and said in her most delicate, performative tone, "We're so lucky to have each other. Even when times are tough. Like with Kennedy's business, there's always open arms. I just want her to know she can move in with me if things get too overwhelming." The entire restaurant fell quiet. All eyes turned to me. My mother gasped softly. My dad's face tightened. My fingers tightened around my fork knuckles, pale, but I didn't speak. What no one at that table knew was that I had already signed a deal with a Montana-based supplier. Faster fulfillment, better margins. I'd secured short-term investment from a Seattle angel investor, and I'd paid off my existing business credit line in just 26 days. But Savannah knew just enough to spin a half-truth into a full-blown humiliation. And she did it with the grace of someone who'd practiced it. No, she wasn't offering help. She was offering herself as the hero while casting me as the helpless tragedy. I didn't clap back, not in that moment. I just raised my glass and smiled, slow and steady. Savannah faltered just slightly, her voice catching, because she didn't know that in my purse, tucked beside my lipstick and wallet, was something far more powerful than a rebuttal. It was a set of keys to the lake house, the one she always said would be hers. She thought the story was hers to write, but I had already built the final chapter, brick by brick. The morning after my father's birthday party, I woke up early, not out of stress, out of clarity. Something had shifted. I had spent most of my life letting Savannah twist the narrative, letting her rewrite me as a supporting role in my own life. But not anymore. I didn't need to prove myself. I just needed to act. That same morning, I made 3 calls to my lawyer to finalize the title transfer on the lake house. To the seller to confirm the keys would be available for handover within the week. To Savannah, well, not a call, a message. Meet me at 1 p.m., 1749 Echo Pine Lane. Don't be late. She texted back in under a minute. What is that place? Are you okay? What's going on? I replied with just 2 words. Just come. I knew she'd recognize the address. She'd mentioned that house for years at birthdays, brunches, and barbecues. That's the dream she'd sigh dramatically, pointing at photos she'd saved on Zillow. That view, it belongs to me. One day, I'll host my wedding there. The irony. A week before, she had even reposted the real estate listing with the caption, "Why is life so cruel?" She didn't know that while she was posting, I was already inside the house signing the purchase agreement with the realtor. No mortgage, no co-buyer, just me. At 12:45, I arrived at Echo Pine Lane. It was a perfect July afternoon. The pine trees stood tall and silent. The lake shimmered like polished glass, and the 2-story timber house looked exactly like the dream she always bragged about owning. I brought coffee, 2 ceramic mugs, sat on the wooden bench out front and waited. At 1:10, Savannah's red Mercedes rolled up. Of course she was late. She stepped out wearing oversized sunglasses, sleek trench coat, and a designer bag tucked under her arm like a prize ribbon. She looked around, clearly unsure. "Who gave you this address?" she asked. Brow furrowed. I motioned to the bench beside me. "Sit down. I've got something to tell you." She took off her sunglasses slowly, her face caught between curiosity and caution, then sat. Right in the spot where 3 years ago she posted that photo with the caption, "One day, this view will be mine." I took a slow sip of coffee and looked at her. "You know, I said evenly I heard everything you said at Dad's birthday. Every single word." Savannah gave a tight smile. "I was just trying to help. I worry about you, Kennedy." I met her eyes steady. "I'm not bankrupt. I never was." Her face twitched just for a second. The smile slipped. "But I saw documents." "Contingency file," I interrupted. "Legal backup, never filed, just preparation. You never should have opened it." Silence stretched between us. For once, she had no comeback. I stood and reached into my coat pocket, pulling out a small ring of keys. I placed them on the bench between us. "Remember this house," I said quietly. "You've talked about it for years, dreamed about it. Said it would be your sanctuary, your legacy." She stared at the keys, then at the front porch, blinking hard. "Don't tell me I signed the papers yesterday," I said. "It's mine." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I kept going calm and measured. No loans, no mortgage. I didn't buy it to prove anything. I bought it because I could, and because I wanted to. Savannah looked out over the lake, blinking against the sunlight. Her shoulders dropped slightly. I could see the cracks forming not in her performance, but in her composure. I didn't tell anyone, I added. Not to be secretive, but because I wanted to see if you'd stop. If you'd finally draw the line and stop dragging my name into your act. But you didn't. She looked down at the keys like they were something sacred she'd lost before ever holding. I poured more coffee into her mug and stood. "Stay here. Take it all in. This view, this house, this moment, because this right here is the cost of assuming everyone else will always play your supporting cast." And with that, I stepped inside, leaving her on the porch alone, silent, and staring at the house she once claimed would complete her life. Justice doesn't always come with fire. Sometimes it arrives on a breeze, carrying the scent of pine wood and dark roast coffee. For the first time, she wasn't the star. She was just my sister. I sat inside the lake house on the wide windowsill in the living room. Morning light spilled in through sheer curtains, casting soft streaks of gold across the polished floorboards. The air was quiet still except for the faint creak of the front porch under Savannah's weight. Through the glass, I could see her, still sitting on the bench, still gripping her coffee mug with both hands like it was keeping her steady, still not moving. 17 minutes passed. She didn't speak. She didn't flinch. The only sign of life was the way she clutched her purse strap tighter and tighter, like it was the only anchor she had left. And then, finally, the door opened. No grand entrance, no heels clicking, no voice announcing itself like a lead actress on stage. just a sigh. Savannah stepped inside the house slower than I had ever seen her move. She sat down across from me without a word. The bags under her eyes were no longer concealed. Her hair was slightly frizzy from the lake breeze, and for the first time in what felt like years, she looked human. She glanced at the coffee pot, then at me. "Do you hate me that much?" she asked, her voice low. I tilted my head. "It's not hate," I said softly. "It's exhaustion." She let out a breath that sounded more like a laugh, but there was no humor in it. "Yeah," she whispered, "you probably are. Tired of carrying your own success? Tired of dodging the sister who always hijacked it?" I didn't respond. I waited. She looked down, running her fingers along the edge of the coffee table. Her voice cracked when she spoke again. "I'm not what everyone thinks. I'm not as rich. Not as anything." She swallowed hard. "That Mercedes rented. The Prada bag fake. My credit card's been declined more than once this month. I'm 3 months behind on rent. My landlord's threatening to call legal services." I blinked. That part I'd suspected. But hearing it from her lips still hit harder than expected. "My latest job," she continued, "that interior design studio. It was a trial. They let me go. I didn't tell Mom. She'd panic. Dad. He just stares when I fail like I embarrass him." Then she looked at me. "No performance, no angle. And you? You're always composed, always have a plan, always steady. You know how small that makes me feel. Sometimes I stayed quiet." "Let her speak. I don't know how to be in the room with you without feeling like I'm disappearing," she said. "So I do what I've always done. I twist the story, make myself useful in the only way I know how." She was unraveling, piece by piece. "I needed people to believe I helped you," she admitted. "Because otherwise, I'm just the older sister with nothing to show for herself. I don't even know who I am when I'm not pretending." I poured more coffee and slid it toward her. Her hand trembled slightly as she took the mug. "And last night I asked. The performance at Dad's party." Savannah closed her eyes. "Awful." "I know. I rehearsed it. Thought I could make myself the hero again. I thought, maybe if I said it sweet enough, I could control the story like before." She opened her eyes again, red-rimmed but steady. I was wrong. The words hung there like fragile glass. I sat back, taking a slow breath. For the first time in our lives, Savannah wasn't lying, spinning, or deflecting. She was just telling the truth. And the silence between us didn't feel like punishment anymore. It felt like possibility. I looked around the lake house. 5 bedrooms, more space than I needed. So I said what I never thought I would. "You can stay here. For a while. If you want." She blinked. "You're not throwing me out." "No," I said calmly, "but I have 3 conditions." She sat up straighter. "1," I said, holding up a finger. "You contribute financially. It's not a charity invite." She nodded slowly. 2, I continued, "You tell the family the truth about everything. The lies, the manipulation, the performance." She hesitated, then nodded again. "And 3, I said, leaning forward, "you stop using my name. No more business cards, no more fake titles, no more social media stunts. My story is mine, not yours." This time she didn't nod immediately, but eventually she looked me in the eye and said, "Deal." And in that moment, I didn't see a rival. I didn't see a threat. I saw a woman who had spent too long pretending too long trying to rewrite her life through mine. I reached across the table and placed my hand on hers. She didn't pull away. Outside, the wind stirred the pines and rippled the lake like the world was slowly exhaling. I didn't know if Savannah and I would ever be best friends, or even close. But for the first time, the conversation was real. The ground felt solid. No performance. No script. Just 2 women tired of pretending, finally sitting in the same scene. We didn't need a dramatic climax. We just needed the truth and one final scene to share it with the world. 2 weeks after that porch conversation, the one where Savannah took off her mask and I offered her a place to stay, we sent out a message in the family group chat. This Sunday, 3 p.m., Echo Pine Lane. There's something important we'd like to share. No other details, just the time, the place, and both our names attached. It didn't take long before the group chat went quiet. No one asked questions, but I could feel the wheels turning behind every scene notification. The day came soft and windless. The lake was calm. The house gleamed in afternoon light like it had been waiting for this moment. I prepped the backyard with folding chairs, pitchers of lemonade and trays of pastries my mom insisted on baking just in case this was serious. Aunt Monica brought crystal glasses. Uncle Robert brought his same old khaki jacket and awkward warmth. And Savannah. She showed up early. That alone shocked everyone. She wore a simple teal linen dress. No brand names, no platform heels, no statement earrings or loud perfume. She stood by the railing, sipping coffee, quiet breathing. At exactly 3:15 p.m., she stepped up onto the porch. She didn't ask for silence. She didn't clap. But the family felt the shift. The energy changed. Conversation slowed, then stopped altogether. She cleared her throat, light, unsure, but she didn't back down. "Thank you all for being here." She began, voice steady but soft. "I know some of you might think I'm here with another story, but this time, it's not about spinning anything, it's about apologizing." There were no gasps, just silence. The kind that doesn't interrupt, just listens. She took a breath. "At the reunion in Cannon Beach, I stood in front of you and painted a picture of Kennedy as a failing business owner. I made it sound like she was crumbling, that she needed saving, that I was the one to do it." She paused. Her hands trembled slightly. But that wasn't true. Not only did I steal her privacy and twist it into pity, I did it because I was drowning in my own failures. I wasn't the helper. I was the one who needed help. Aunt Monica set down her drink. My dad's lips tightened. Mom reached for his hand. Savannah kept going. No tears this time, just honesty. Kennedy didn't clap back. She didn't shame me in front of anyone, but she did something stronger. She showed me the cost of rewriting someone else's story by quietly reclaiming her own. She looked around, then turned to me. "This house, the one I always said I'd buy, it's hers, bought outright. No loans, no help. And I had no idea until I sat on that bench and she told me, calm as ever, that she had moved forward without needing a single word from me." The air was still. Not heavy, just full. She looked down, then up. "I'm sorry, Kennedy. For the lies, for the jealousy, for the performances. I'm sorry for pretending your spotlight belonged to me." A beat of silence. I stood, walked to her, and without thinking, I hugged her. Not for the family, not for show, just because it was time. Aunt Beth let out a tiny sob. Mom started crying. Dad nodded slowly as if he'd finally understood something he hadn't seen for decades. And just like that, the moment passed into something else. We ate. We laughed. We told stories, real ones. No branding, no filters. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the strong one or the quiet one or the successful one who doesn't need anything. I was just Kennedy, a daughter, a sister, a woman with a house, a company, and a name that didn't need protecting anymore. Later that night, after most people had gone home, Savannah and I stood on the porch. The lake shimmered under the moon. She looked out at the water arms crossed against the chill. "It's quiet here," she said. "Yeah," I replied, "but it's the good kind of quiet." She nodded, brushing hair out of her face. "You didn't just take my dream, Kennedy," she said softly. "You woke me up from it." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I just stood beside her shoulder to shoulder. That lake house, once a symbol of rivalry, had become something else, a beginning. Not because it was expensive, not because it was beautiful, but because for the first time it witnessed two women, two sisters stepping out of competition and into truth. Ending call to action. Have you ever had someone rewrite your story or tried to take credit for your hard work? What would you do if your own family became your rival? Share your experience in the comments. Let's talk about healing truth and what it takes to reclaim your voice. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow this channel for more real-life stories of quiet power and emotional reckoning. Because some of the strongest people in the world are the ones who rise without applause. And sometimes a shadow becomes the light.